How did Chancellor Bismarck unify Germany? And what were the major consequences for the European balance of power? Right, Germany. So Germany is, well, historically, the past century or so, it's been the engine that drives the European economy. It's the most, historically, we know, it's been, you could say, the most powerful nation in Europe until 1945, you could say, right? But Germany as a nation, it it was born in 1871. Before that, there was never something called Germany. The Romans spoke about various Germanic tribes, the Swabi and the whatever the names of the tribes were. And there was never a unified German nation. There were various Germanic speaking, well, states, you could say, duchies and so on, principalities and so on, but it was never one unified nation called Germany. So Bismarck, so there was something called Prussia. Prussia was this major, you could say, German speaking principality in what is now Germany. So Bismarck, Otto von Bismarck, was Prussian, and he was appointed in the 1860s as the minister president of Prussia. Okay, if you want to see where is Prussia, what used to be Prussia, let's first take a look at that. What was Prussia? Prussia. So let's go to images, and this was Prussia essentially. Okay, the green part, which is obviously kind of part of much of Germany today, that was Prussia. Here's another example of Prussia. This is from 1867 to 1871, before the war. So we will talk about that now. So that was Prussia, and Otto von Bismarck became the minister president of Prussia in the 1860s. And he said that we're going to unify the land through blood and iron, through strategy and realpolitik. So then he engineered 3 wars of unification. Okay, the first war was the Danish War. He went to war with what Bismarck did is that he allied with Austria. He allied with Austria and fought Denmark and defeated Denmark, and they took the then Danish territories of Schleswig and Holstein, and that became part of their territory. And then he went to war with Austria, with whom he had allied against Denmark. So first in the 1860s, there's a war with Denmark, which Prussia and Austria win. Then Prussia goes to war against Austria. He found some pretext, some excuse to go to war with Austria. He allied himself with Italy. He ensured that the French and the Russians remain neutral. And then he went to war with Austria and defeated Austria. And then he marginalized Austria. He essentially excluded Austria from German affairs altogether. And the old confederation and old alliance was invalidated or dissolved. So he defeats Austria. And then there's the pivotal war, 1870, 1871, the Franco-Prussian War. So now that Austria is dealt with, right, he now goes to war. He goads France into declaring war against Prussia. And then he says that we are facing an existential threat. France is going to defeat us all. So he rallies all the other southern German principalities into an alliance with Prussia to defeat the French. And they're able to defeat the French. And there is a very harsh treaty that is imposed on the French. And the French territory, Alsace and Lorraine, is taken into Germany, is annexed into Germany. And by doing this, he was able to consolidate and create a unified Germany through these 3 wars. First with Denmark, then with Austria, then with the French. And that's how he was able to, create this common cause for all the German principalities, that we have to come together, unify and unite. Otherwise, we'll be taken apart. And that's how he was able to create a unified Germany. So 1871 is the creation of the German Empire. Prussia under Bismarck brought all the southern principalities and states and duchies into a new federal structure, which was dominated by Berlin. Okay, and then they proclaimed Wilhelm I as the German Empire in Versailles, in France. It was in 1871, and the entire thing was structured in such a way that Prussia was essentially in control of various aspects of administration and the major power in what was now Germany, especially power over the army, military policy, foreign policy, economic policy, all of that. So the unification of Germany was a triumph of Bismarck. It was a triumph of Prussian power. And it was a triumph of German nationalism. So, what kind of consequences did this have on Europe? Is the question that Nirvana Shanks is asking. What were the consequences for Europe? So, you suddenly have in 1871 the creation of a new German empire, a new nation of Germany and a German empire. This new nation, it has a large population, it has advanced industry, it has a tremendously excellent education system. It has this laser focus on technology and science. I mean, quantum mechanics comes out of Germany, right? Doesn't it? And they had, because they had an advanced industry, high quality industry, because of that, they also had a first rate military. And Germany essentially almost overnight became the leading terrestrial or land power in Europe, and it became a major industrial economy and a major and the leader in science and technology and engineering and everything else in Germany. And because of this excellent education system, it eventually gave the world tremendously gifted physicists who changed the way we understand the world. Okay, and Austria was permanently excluded from German politics. It was marginalized, and it was relegated to a regional role within a dual monarchy, which is Austria-Hungary, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Right? It weakened Austria significantly. France lost Alsace-Lorraine. France was humiliated. It lost prestige, and this obviously gave rise to this desire for revenge within the people of France. And this became, you could say, a long-term, persistent source of enmity with this new nation of Germany. And the unification of this new nation, Germany, it forced various other powers like Russia and everybody else to look towards creating their own alliances, because the rise of this strong, confident, very powerful new Germany, it obviously led to the intensification of arms races and rivalries with obviously France, with Russia, with Italy and Austro-Hungary, and so much more. So you had tension, and eventually, obviously, Britain. Yeah, Britain also was, as you know, it was the British Raj, the days of the British Raj. So the creation of this new nation, it obviously would be seen as worrisome from England, and all these factors, all these simmering rivalries and hostilities, they became the melting pot, and you could say the key factors that eventually pushed Europe towards what would be called the First World War. So yeah, it set in motion a series of events that gave rise to the First World War. So the period between 1871 and 1914, you could say, was a period of Cold War where everybody was looking for an advantage, and everyone was looking for the day we can go back to war and settle old scores. So that was the deal. Chancellor Bismarck unifying Germany, and eventually all culminated in the First World War, which did not end satisfactorily for Germany, which gave rise to the Second World War. And the rest we understand.